The sound of David shoving papers into his briefcase at 11 p.m. should have been my first clue. But after 16 years of marriage, I'd grown used to his late-night emergencies at the law firm. What I wasn't prepared for was finding him transferring $82,000 from our joint accounts at 2 a.m. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. David? I whispered from the doorway of his home office. What are you doing? He didn't even look up from his laptop screen. Financial planning. Go back to bed, Rachel. But I could see the bank transfer page clearly from where I stood. Our daughter, Sophia's college fund, every penny we'd saved since she was born, was being moved to an account I'd never seen before. That's Sophia's money. My voice came out stronger than I felt. David finally turned around, and the look in his eyes was one I'd never seen before. Cold. Calculated. It's our money, Rachel. And I'm investing it properly. Investing it where? You wouldn't understand. It's complicated. I stood there in my pajamas, watching my husband of 16 years treat me like I was too stupid to understand basic finances. The same man who used to ask my opinion on every major decision was now dismissing me like a child. David, that money is for Sophia's education. We agreed. I'm handling our family's finances now. He turned back to his computer. Trust me. But trust was exactly what I was losing as I watched him click through screens I couldn't fully see. Something was wrong. Everything about this moment felt wrong. The next morning, I woke up to find David's side of the bed empty and cold. His coffee cup sat abandoned on the kitchen counter, and when I went to check his closet, half his clothes were gone. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My hands shook as I opened my laptop and logged into our bank account. The screen loaded, and my world collapsed. Checking account, $247.83. Savings account, $0. Sophia's college fund, $0.00. 16 years of careful saving, of skipping vacations and buying generic groceries to put money away for our daughter's future. Gone. All of it gone. I called David's phone. Straight to voicemail. I called his office. His secretary said he'd called in sick. I called again an hour later, and she said he'd taken a leave of absence for a family emergency. While he was destroying his family. I was still staring at the bank account when Sophia walked into the kitchen, already dressed for school. She poured herself a glass of orange juice and sat down across from me. Mom, she said quietly, I know about Dad and Victoria. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Victoria Martinez. His paralegal. They'd been having an affair for 8 months. Sophia's voice was calm, matter-of-fact, like she was discussing a school assignment. And I know he took my college money. I stared at my 14-year-old daughter, trying to process what she'd just said. Sophia, how could you possibly know? I've been watching him. She took a sip of her juice. Mom, don't panic. I'm handling this. The casual way she said it sent chills down my spine. What do you mean you're handling this? Sophia checked her watch and stood up. I mean, Dad made a mistake. He thought I was just a kid who wouldn't notice what was happening. She grabbed her backpack. But I notice everything. Sophia, wait, I'll miss my bus if I don't leave now. We'll talk after school, okay? She kissed my cheek like it was any other morning. Don't worry, Mom. Really. And then she was gone, leaving me alone in a kitchen that suddenly felt enormous and empty, with questions I couldn't answer and a future I couldn't see. The house felt different that first day without David. Not just empty, but somehow charged with an energy I couldn't identify. I spent the morning calling lawyers, banks, anyone who might help me understand what David had done and whether it could be undone. The answers weren't encouraging. As joint account holders, David had every legal right to move our money. The college fund, while morally designated for Sophia, was technically a savings account in our names. There was nothing illegal about what he'd done, nothing illegal, but absolutely devastating. I was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by bank statements and legal documents, when Sophia came home from school. She looked at the papers scattered across the table and nodded like she'd expected this. You called lawyers, she said. How did you? You have that look you get when you're trying to solve a problem by following all the official rules. Sophia set her backpack down. What did they tell you? That what your father did was legal. Morally reprehensible, but legal. Sophia nodded. That's what I thought. The system protects people like Dad because he's smart enough to steal without technically breaking any laws. The way she said it, so clinical and analytical, made me realize my daughter had been thinking about this situation far longer than I had. Sophia, how long have you known? She pulled out a chair and sat down across from me. I started suspecting something in February. Dad's behavior changed. He became secretive about his phone, started working late more often, and he kept asking weird questions about my college plans. What kind of questions? Like whether I'd definitely chosen state university, or if I might consider community college first. Whether I really needed to live on campus, or if I could commute from home. Sophia's jaw tightened slightly. At first I thought he was just being practical, but then I realized he was trying to figure out how much money he could take without completely destroying my future. I felt sick. So you investigated? I watched. I listened. I paid attention. To patterns. Sophia reached into her backpack and pulled out a small notebook. Dad's always been predictable. Same passwords, same routines, same habits. He just thought nobody was paying attention. She opened the notebook, and I saw pages of handwritten notes. Dates, times, observations about David's behavior. Phone calls logged, late nights documented, patterns of movement tracked. Sophia, this is. I struggled for words. This is incredibly thorough. I'm good at math and patterns. Dad taught me that, actually. There was something bitter in her voice. He used to say that success comes from paying attention to details other people miss. I flipped through more pages of her meticulous documentation. When did you find out about Victoria? 3 weeks ago. Dad forgot to close his laptop one night, and I saw their email conversation. Sophia's voice remained steady. They were discussing apartment hunting in Palo Alto. Victoria got accepted to Stanford Law School. The pieces clicked together in my mind. The college fund. Stanford tuition is $68,000 a year. Add living expenses, books, everything else. Sophia shrugged. My college fund was the perfect amount for her first year. I felt like I might throw up. My husband had stolen our daughter's future to pay for his mistress's education. What else do you know? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Sophia closed her notebook. I know they've been planning this for months. I know. Dad opened new bank accounts that you don't have access to. I know they're looking at condos in California. She paused. And I know Dad thinks he's untouchable because he covered his legal bases. But Dad made one critical error. Sophia stood up. He assumed I would be too hurt and confused to fight back. There was something in her tone that made me look at her more carefully. My daughter stood there in her school uniform, looking like any other 14-year-old, but there was steel in her eyes that I'd never seen before. Sophia, what are you planning? Justice, she said simply. Dad wants to play games with our family's future? Fine. But he's playing against someone who learned strategy from him. And I'm better at it than he is. That evening, I found myself watching Sophia with new eyes. She went through her normal routine, homework, dinner, helping me with dishes, but I kept catching glimpses of something else. A phone I'd never seen before that she checked periodically. Quick glances at her laptop that seemed more purposeful. Then casual browsing. Around 9 o'clock, I heard the soft clicking of computer keys coming from her room. Steady, focused typing that went on for hours. I should have felt grateful that my daughter was handling our crisis with such composure. Instead, I felt afraid. Not of Sophia, but of what circumstances had forced her to become. David called my phone 3 days later. I was in the grocery store, trying to figure out how to feed us on what little money remained in our checking account, when his name appeared on my screen. Rachel. His voice was tight, stressed. We need to talk. I don't think we do. Someone's been accessing my accounts. My personal accounts, my work email, everything. There was panic in his voice that I'd never heard before. Someone with serious technical skills. I felt a chill run down my spine. What are you talking about? Someone's watching everything I do online. They've been reading my emails, tracking my financial transactions, even monitoring my social media activity. David's breathing was audible. Through the phone. Rachel, do you know anything about this? Why would I know anything about it? Because whoever's doing this knows details about our family that only we would know. They're using information about Sophia, about our marriage, about things that happened years ago. I looked around the grocery store, suddenly feeling exposed. And paranoid. David, I don't know what you're talking about. Then who? His voice cracked. Who else would have access to that kind of personal information? That night, I knocked softly on Sophia's bedroom door. Come in, she called. I found her at her desk, typing on her laptop. The screen showed what looked like financial documents, but she closed it quickly when I entered. Sophia, your father called today. I know. She turned around in her chair. He's starting to realize he's not as invisible as he thought. Are you accessing his accounts? Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Mom, do you want to know exactly what Dad has done to us? Or do you want to pretend this is all going to work out somehow? I want to know. Then yes. I've been accessing his accounts. All of them. Her voice was steady, unflinching. And what I found is worse than just the affair and the stolen money. She opened her laptop again, and I saw screens full of financial data, email conversations, and legal documents. Dad didn't just take our money to help Victoria with law school, Sophia said. He's been planning to disappear completely. New bank accounts, new credit cards, even a new lease agreement for an apartment in California. She scrolled through documents that showed a level of betrayal I couldn't have imagined. He was going to abandon us and start over, leaving us with nothing. I sank onto her bed, overwhelmed by the scope of David's deception. But here's what Dad doesn't know, Sophia continued. Every move he's made, every account he's opened, every plan he's put in place, I've been documenting all of it. What are you going to do with that information? Sophia smiled, and it was not the smile of a 14-year-old girl. It was the smile of someone who had just realized they held all the cards. I'm going to remind Dad that actions have consequences, she said. And that some games have rules he doesn't understand. That night, as I lay in bed listening to the continued clicking of computer keys from Sophia's room, I realized my daughter was fighting a war I couldn't see. And somehow, I knew she was going to win. The first sign that Sophia's plan was working came on a Tuesday morning when David called me at 6:47 a.m., his voice raw with panic. Rachel, something's happening. Victoria's bank accounts have been frozen. The police showed up at her apartment last night asking about fraudulent loan applications. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering. What kind of fraudulent applications? Someone applied for credit cards and personal loans using her information. Thousands of dollars worth of applications, all flagged as suspicious because they were submitted from IP addresses linked to known scam operations. David's voice was shaking. The authorities think she's running some kind of identity theft ring. Through my bedroom wall, I could hear the soft clicking of Sophia's keyboard. She was awake, listening to every word. David, that's terrible, but I don't understand why you're calling me about Victoria's problems. Because whoever's targeting her knows about us. The fraud reports included details about our relationship, about the money transfers, about everything. He was breathing hard now. Rachel, someone's systematically destroying our lives. Your lives, I corrected. You destroyed mine when you stole our daughter's future. Don't you understand? If Victoria gets arrested, if this fraud investigation expands, they're going to look at all the money movements, including the transfers from our accounts. The clicking from Sophia's room stopped abruptly. What are you saying, David? I'm saying that whoever's doing this isn't just going after Victoria. They're setting up a scenario where I look like an accomplice in financial crimes. His voice dropped to a whisper. Rachel, I think someone's trying to frame us both. After I hung up, I knocked on Sophia's door. She was sitting at her desk, multiple monitors now arranged in a configuration I hadn't seen before. Did you hear all that? I asked. Every word. Sophia didn't look away from her screens. Dad's finally starting to understand that there are consequences for his choices. Sophia, did you file fraudulent loan applications using Victoria's identity? She turned around, and I saw a flash of something that might have been hurt in her eyes. Mom, I would never commit fraud. I'm not like Dad. Then what? I reported Victoria's actual fraudulent activities to the appropriate authorities. Sophia pulled up a window showing what appeared to be official government reporting forms. Turns out Victoria has been using her position at Dad's law firm to help clients set up questionable financial arrangements. She's been taking fees for services that blur the line between legal advice and money laundering. I stared at the documents on her screen. Bank transfer records, client communications, fee structures that looked designed to hide the movement of money. How did you find all this? Victoria's incredibly sloppy with digital security. She uses her work computer for personal activities, saves passwords in her browser, and never clears her digital footprint. Sophia clicked through more screens. Once I had access to her work accounts, I just followed the paper trail. And the loan applications? Those were real applications Victoria filed using client information. I just made sure the right people knew about them. Sophia's voice was matter of fact. Victoria Martinez has been committing actual crimes, Mom. I'm just ensuring she faces actual consequences. The complexity of what my 14-year-old daughter had uncovered was staggering. She hadn't framed Victoria, she'd exposed Victoria's existing criminal activity. What about your father? Dad's more complicated. What he did to us was morally wrong but legally defensible. So I had to get more creative. That afternoon, while Sophia was at school, I received a call from David's law firm. Mrs. Patterson? This is Margaret Chen, the senior partner at Patterson, Williams and Associates. I need to speak with you about David. My stomach dropped. Is he in trouble? We're not sure yet. David failed to appear for several client meetings this week, and we've discovered some irregularities in client account management. We're trying to reach him, but he's not responding to calls or emails. I haven't spoken to David since our separation began. I understand. Mrs. Patterson, did David mention anything about taking an extended leave of absence? Or traveling out of state? No, nothing like that. The reason I ask is that we've received some anonymous communications suggesting David might be involved in activities that could compromise client confidentiality. We're required to investigate any allegations that could affect our firm's reputation. After I hung up, I realized that Sophia had somehow managed to make David's abandonment of our family into a professional liability for his law firm. When she came home from school, I confronted her directly. What did you send to your father's law firm? Sophia set down her backpack and looked at me calmly. Copies of Dad's communications with Victoria where they discussed using firm resources for personal activities. Email threads where Dad shared confidential client information with Victoria to help plan their move to California. Phone records showing calls made to Victoria during billable client hours. All of that is true. Every word. Dad violated attorney-client privilege, misused firm resources, and committed time theft. I just made sure his employers knew about it. I sat down hard at the kitchen table. Sophia, what you're doing, it's incredibly sophisticated. And incredibly dangerous. What Dad did to us was dangerous. She pulled out her notebook and opened it to a page I hadn't seen before. Mom, did you know that Dad's been using your social security number to open credit accounts? The words hit me like a physical blow. What? 3 credit cards and a personal loan. All in your name, but using an address you've never lived at. The debt is currently sitting at about $47,000. I felt like I might faint. He committed identity theft against me. Dad's been building a financial safety net for his new life, and he's been using our identities to do it. The credit cards are being used to pay for his and Victoria's living expenses in California. I stared at my daughter, realizing that David's betrayal was even more extensive than I'd understood. But I've taken care of it, Sophia continued. I've filed identity theft reports with all 3 credit agencies, contacted the credit card companies, and submitted fraud complaints to federal authorities. The accounts will be closed and the debt will be removed from your credit report. How do you know how to do all this? The same way I learned everything else. Research, patience, and attention to detail. Sophia closed her notebook. Dad taught me to be thorough. He just never expected me to be thorough about him. That evening, David called again. This time, his voice was different. Not panicked, but cold and angry. Rachel, I know what's happening now. What are you talking about? Our daughter. Sophia. She's been sabotaging everything I've worked for. I felt a chill run down my spine. David, don't pretend you don't know. Victoria is under federal investigation. My law firm is conducting an internal review that could end my career. Bank accounts I've never heard of are being linked to my name in fraud reports. His voice was rising. This isn't coincidence, Rachel. This is warfare. If you're facing consequences for your actions, my actions? I moved some money around. To secure our family's future. What Sophia is doing is criminal destruction of property and reputation. The irony of David accusing someone else of criminal activity while he'd been committing identity theft was almost laughable. David, maybe. You should come home and talk to your daughter directly. No. What I'm going to do is contact the authorities about what she's doing. Hacking into accounts, filing false reports, cyberstalking and harassment. His voice was venomous now. Our little girl is about to learn that there are serious legal consequences for what she's been doing. After he hung up, I found Sophia in her room, calmly working on what looked like homework. Your father knows it's you, I said. Good. She didn't look up from her math problems. I was wondering when he'd figure it out. Sophia, he's threatening to call the police. To have you arrested. Now she looked up, and I saw something in her eyes that was far older than 14 years. Mom, let me ask you something. What crime do you think I've committed? Well, accessing his accounts without permission. Dad used our family computer to access all his accounts. He never logged out, never changed passwords, never secured his data. Legally speaking, those accounts were accessible on a shared family device. The reports you filed were all truthful reports of actual criminal activity. Filing truthful reports with authorities isn't a crime. It's civic duty. The things happening to Victoria are the direct result of her own illegal activities. I didn't create her crimes, Mom. I just made sure the right people knew about them. I sank into her desk chair, overwhelmed by the realization that my daughter had thought through every legal angle. Sophia, how are you this smart about all this? Because I had to be. She set down her pencil. Dad spent months planning how to destroy our family without facing consequences. So I spent months learning how to ensure he faces consequences he can't avoid. What's going to happen now? Now Dad has to choose. He can come home, return our money, and face the family he betrayed. Or he can stay in California with Victoria and face the legal consequences of identity theft, fraud, and professional misconduct. And if he chooses to fight? Sophia smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Then he'll discover that I'm much better at this game than he is. The next morning, I woke up to find Sophia already dressed and eating breakfast, her phone buzzing constantly with notifications. What's happening? I asked. Dad made his choice. She held up her phone, showing me what appeared to be news articles. Victoria Martinez was arrested early this morning on federal fraud charges. Dad was with her when it happened. My blood went cold. They arrested David too? No. But he was questioned as a potential accomplice. His name is now part of a federal investigation into financial crimes. Sophia took a sip of her orange juice. The local news picked up the story because Dad's law firm is well known in town. I read the headlines on her phone: local attorney's paralegal arrested in federal fraud case, and Patterson, Williams and Associates under investigation for client account irregularities. Sophia, this is going to destroy his career. Yes, it is. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. Just like he tried to destroy our future. But he's still your father. A father who stole his daughter's college fund to pay for his mistress's education. A father who committed identity theft against his wife. A father who abandoned his family to start over with a criminal. Sophia stood up and grabbed her backpack. Mom, he stopped being my father the moment he chose Victoria over us. As I watched her walk to the school bus, I realized that my daughter had waged and won a war I couldn't have imagined. But the victory felt hollow somehow, like we'd all lost something irreplaceable in the process. That afternoon, the phone rang. It was David. Rachel, please. I'm begging you. Call off your daughter. I can't call off justice, David. My life is over. My career, my reputation, everything I've worked for, it's all gone. His voice was broken now. Victoria's in federal custody. The law firm fired me. I can't even get a job interview because my name is linked to a fraud investigation. What did you expect would happen when you stole from your own family? I thought I thought I could make it work. I thought I could build something better for all of us. You built something better for Victoria. With our money. Rachel, I'll give it back. All of it. I'll return every penny to Sophia's college fund. I'll come home, I'll make this right, I'll do whatever you want. Just please, make her stop. It's too late for that, David. It's not too late. It can't be too late. He was crying now. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to have my entire life destroyed. You destroyed our lives first. That evening, Sophia and I sat in our kitchen, eating dinner in the quiet house that had once been filled with David's presence. Do you ever regret what you did? I asked her. Sophia considered the question carefully. I regret that Dad forced me to do it. I regret that he made choices that turned me into someone who could do it. She took a bite of her pasta. But I don't regret protecting our family, Mom. Someone had to. What happens now? Now we rebuild. Dad's returning the money, all of it, plus the debt he created in your name. Victoria is facing federal charges that will probably result in prison time. And Dad. She shrugged. Dad will have to figure out how to live with the consequences of his choices. And us? We'll be okay. Better than okay, actually. Sophia smiled, and for the first time in months, it looked like the smile of a 14-year-old girl. Dad thought he could steal our future. Instead, he taught me that I'm strong enough to protect it myself. As we finished dinner, I realized that David's betrayal had revealed something remarkable about my daughter. She wasn't just smart, she was formidable. And while I mourned the innocence she'd lost, I was proud of the strength she'd found outside. It was starting to rain, but inside our small house, it felt like the storm was finally over. 3 weeks after Victoria's arrest, David showed up at our front door at 7:30 in the morning. I saw him through the kitchen window, sitting in his car for nearly 20 minutes before finally walking up the driveway. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past month, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing clothes that hung loose on his frame. I opened the door before he could knock. Rachel. His voice was barely above a whisper. Can we talk? Sophia's getting ready for school. I know. I've been watching the house, learning your routines again. He ran a hand through his unwashed hair. I need to see her. I need to try to explain. Explain what? How you stole her future. How you committed crimes using my identity. How you abandoned your family for a criminal. David flinched at each accusation. I need to make this right. You can't make this right, David. You can't undo what you've done. I can try. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. I signed over my partnership share in the firm. All of it goes to Sophia's college fund. It's worth about $340,000. I stared at the legal document in his hands. The firm that fired you. They bought out my partnership to avoid further scandal. Margaret Chen called it damage control. His laugh was bitter. Turns out 16 years of building a legal practice can be erased in a few weeks when your daughter is better at investigation than you are at covering your tracks. Behind me, I heard Sophia's footsteps on the stairs. She appeared in the hallway, fully dressed for school, backpack in hand. When she saw David through the open door, she stopped. Hello, Dad. The casual way she said it, like he was a neighbor. Dropping by instead of the man who'd shattered our family, seemed to hit David harder than anger would have. Sophia. Sweetheart. He struggled for words. I came to apologize. To try to explain. To make things right. Okay. She stepped closer to the door. Explain. David looked between Sophia and me, clearly having expected more resistance. Can I come in? No, Sophia said simply. You can explain from there. David's shoulders sagged. Victoria made me feel like I was drowning in my old life. Like I was stuck in routines that were slowly killing me. She made me feel young again, important again. So you stole my college. Fun to make yourself feel better? I thought I could replace it. I thought if I helped Victoria get through law school, she'd be able to help me start a new practice. We'd be wealthy enough to pay for your college 10 times over. Sophia adjusted her backpack straps. Did you consider asking me if I wanted to gamble my future on your midlife crisis? The bluntness of her question made David wince. You're 14. I didn't think you'd understand the complexities. I'm 14 and I dismantled your entire life in 3 weeks. Maybe you should have given me more credit for understanding complexities. David stared at his daughter, perhaps truly seeing her for the first time. How did you learn to do what you did? You taught me. Every time you showed me how to research case law, how to follow paper trails, how to build arguments based on evidence. Sophia's voice remained level. You taught me that justice requires preparation, patience, and attention to detail. I never taught you to destroy people's lives. You never taught me not to. Besides, I didn't destroy your life, Dad. I exposed the life you chose to build on lies and stolen money. David looked like he might cry. Victoria's facing 20 years in federal prison. Her life is over. Victoria stole money from elderly clients saving for retirement. Her life should be over. Sophia checked her watch. Is there something specific you wanted to say? I have a chemistry test this morning. I want to come home. The words hung in the air between us. I felt my breath catch, but Sophia's expression didn't change. Home to what, Dad? To the family you abandoned? To the wife whose identity you stole? To the daughter whose future you sold? I made mistakes, you made choices. There's a difference. Sophia stepped past me toward the door. Mistakes are accidents. What you did required planning, deception, and months of deliberate betrayal. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. David's voice cracked. But I'm still your father. Doesn't that count for something? Sophia paused at the threshold, considering his question with the same analytical approach she applied to everything else. Being my father means you were supposed to protect me, provide for me, and put my welfare above your own desires. You did. The opposite of all those things. She looked directly at him. So no, being my father doesn't count for something. It counts against you. David's face crumpled. Sophia, please. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy, I'll change everything about how I live, I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you. The rest of your life won't be long enough. With that, Sophia walked past her father toward the school bus stop. David turned to watch her go, his hands shaking. She's going to get on that bus and go to school like this conversation never happened, he said to me. How is she so calm about all this? Because she's stronger than both of us. Because she had to be. David turned back to me, desperation in his eyes. Rachel, please. Help me understand how to reach her. How to fix this. You don't fix this, David. You live with it. There has to be something I can do. There is. You can stay away from us and let us rebuild our lives without you. After David left, I sat at the kitchen table trying to process what had just happened. The man I'd been married to for 16 years had begged his 14-year-old daughter for forgiveness, and she'd dismissed him with the cold precision of a judge delivering a sentence. When Sophia came home from school that afternoon, she found me still sitting in the same chair. How was your chemistry test? I asked. Easy. Acids and bases are predictable once you understand their properties. She set her backpack down. Unlike people, who can surprise you with how far they'll fall. Are you talking about your father? I'm talking about how Dad used to help me with science homework. He'd explain how chemical reactions work, how elements bond and break apart, how some changes are reversible and others aren't. Sophia pulled out her test, marked with a perfect score. He never mentioned that the same principles apply to families. Do you think the changes in our family are reversible? Sophia considered this question while washing an apple at the sink. Some damage can be repaired. Trust, once broken completely, undergoes an irreversible reaction. It becomes something different. Something that looks like trust but has different properties. The way she analyzed our family's destruction like a chemistry experiment was both impressive and heartbreaking. Do you miss him? The father you thought he was? I miss the illusion. But you can't miss something that was never real. She took a bite of her apple. Mom, Dad's going to keep trying to come back. He's desperate now, and desperate people make predictable mistakes. What kind of mistakes? He'll try to manipulate you emotionally. He'll promise to change, threaten to hurt himself, maybe even try to turn other people against me by claiming I'm some kind of dangerous criminal. Sophia sat down across from me. We need to be prepared for escalation. As if summoned by her words, my phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. Don't answer it, Sophia said quietly. What if it's an emergency? If it's a real emergency, he'll call 911. If it's emotional manipulation, he'll call you. The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. He's going to keep calling until you answer, Sophia observed. Answer it, but put it on speaker. I want to hear what strategy he's using. I accepted the call and activated speaker mode. Rachel. Thank God. I've been calling for hours. It's been 20 minutes, David. I need you to understand something about Sophia. About what she's become. His voice was urgent, almost frantic. Rachel, our daughter is dangerous. What she did to Victoria. To me, it's not normal. 14-year-olds don't have those kinds of capabilities. Sophia rolled her eyes. What are you saying, David? I'm saying that Sophia has crossed lines that adults shouldn't cross, let alone children. She's hacked into private accounts, manipulated government agencies, destroyed people's lives without remorse. His voice was rising. Rachel, she's become someone we don't recognize. She's become someone who protects her family when her father won't. This isn't protection, it's revenge. Cold, calculated revenge executed by a child who's learned to feel nothing when she destroys people. Sophia gestured for me to keep him talking. David, Sophia exposed actual crimes. She didn't create the situation, she created the consequences. There's a difference between reporting a crime and systematically destroying every aspect of someone's life. His breathing was heavy. Now. Rachel, I'm scared of our own daughter. And you should be too. Why would I be scared of Sophia? Because she's demonstrated that she's capable of anything. If she can do what she did to Victoria and me, what's to stop her from turning those same skills against you if you ever disappoint her? I looked at Sophia, who was listening with clinical interest, like David was a case study she was analyzing. Sophia would never hurt me. Sophia never showed any signs of being able to do what she did to us either. But she learned. She planned. She executed a campaign that destroyed 2 adults' lives. David's voice dropped to a whisper. Rachel, what happens when she gets angry at you? What happens when she decides you're not living up to her standards? I hang up, that's what happens. I reached for the phone. Wait. Please. David's desperation was palpable. I'm not trying to turn you against Sophia. I'm trying to warn you that our daughter has become someone we need to be very, very careful around. After I hung up, Sophia sat quietly for a moment, processing what she'd heard. Well? I asked. Dad's strategy is to make you afraid of me so you'll side with him against me. She spoke like she was solving a math problem. It's actually pretty clever. He can't win by appealing to logic or justice, so he's trying to create paranoia. Are you dangerous, Sophia? She looked at me with those serious green eyes. Mom, I'm dangerous to people who try to hurt our family. I'm not dangerous to people who don't. She paused. The question is whether you trust me enough to see the difference. I trust you. But David's right about one thing, what you're capable of is extraordinary. And sometimes extraordinary capabilities in young people can be frightening. Do you want me to be less capable? Do you want me to be helpless the next time someone tries to destroy our family? I want you to be safe. And I want you to be happy. I am safe. I'm safer than I've ever been because I understand how to protect myself now. Sophia finished her apple. And I'm happier than I was when I had to watch Dad lie to us every day while planning our destruction. That evening, while Sophia was doing homework, I found myself researching gifted children and trauma responses. What I learned both reassured and worried me. Children with exceptional analytical abilities often process traumatic events differently than their peers. They might intellectualize emotions, develop sophisticated coping strategies, and demonstrate remarkable resilience. But they might also struggle with trust, develop hypervigilance, and have difficulty forming normal emotional attachments. The next morning brought another surprise. A woman I'd never seen before knocked on our door at 8 a.m. Mrs. Patterson? I'm Dr. Sarah Kim from Child Protective Services. We received a report concerning your daughter Sophia. My blood went cold. What kind of report? Allegations that a minor in your household has been engaging in potentially dangerous cyber activities without appropriate supervision. Dr. Kim consulted her notes. The report suggests that Sophia may be using advanced technical skills in ways that could put her or others at risk. I knew immediately who had filed the report. Can I ask who made these allegations? The report was filed by David Patterson, who identifies himself as Sophia's father. He's expressed concerns about Sophia's recent behavior and her access to technology. That allows her to, quote, manipulate and destroy adults' lives without supervision or consequences. Sophia appeared in the hallway behind me, dressed for school. Are you Sophia? Dr. Kim asked. Yes, ma'am. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your computer activities, if that's okay. Of course. Would you like to see my homework, my school projects, or my research for the academic decathlon? Dr. Kim seemed taken aback by Sophia's composure. I'd like to understand what kind of technology skills you have and how you use them. I know basic programming, web design, database management, and digital security protocols. I use these skills for school assignments, academic competitions, and helping my mother manage our family's finances since my father abandoned us. Your father has expressed concerns that you might be using these skills to access other people's private information. My father is concerned that I discovered his criminal activities and reported them to appropriate authorities. Sophia's voice remained perfectly calm. He's facing legal consequences for identity theft and professional misconduct. I assume he's trying to discredit me to avoid accountability. Dr. Kim made notes as Sophia spoke. Can you show me examples of how you use technology in your daily life? For the next hour, Sophia walked Dr. Kim through her computer activities. School assignments, research projects, financial tracking spreadsheets for our household budget, and educational resources she'd created to help other students learn programming. Everything was organized, age-appropriate, and clearly documented. Sophia, your father suggests that you've been accessing accounts that don't belong to you. I've accessed accounts that my father used on our family computer. When someone uses shared devices and doesn't secure their personal information, that information becomes accessible to other users of those devices. Sophia pulled up a legal document on her laptop. I researched the relevant statutes to make sure I understood the boundaries of legal access. Dr. Kim reviewed the legal research, which was as thorough as anything a law student might produce. And the reports you filed with various agencies? All truthful reports of actual criminal activities I discovered. Filing truthful reports with appropriate authorities is not only legal, it's encouraged. Sophia showed Dr. Kim the official forms she'd submitted. I have documentation supporting every claim I made. After Dr. Kim left, satisfied that Sophia was not only safe but exceptionally well informed about legal and ethical boundaries, I sat down with my daughter. Your father's trying to have you removed from my custody. I know. It won't work. Sophia closed her laptop. Dad doesn't understand that the system he's trying to manipulate requires evidence, not just allegations. And all the evidence supports my version of events. Aren't you angry? Hurt. Your own father is trying to take you away from me. Mom, Dad stopped being my father when he chose Victoria over us. Now he's just a man trying to avoid consequences for his choices. Sophia stood up. I'm not angry about it. I expected it. How can you be so calm about all this? Because I learned something important about people, Mom. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Dad showed me he's someone who will sacrifice his own family for personal gain. Everything he's done since then has been consistent with that character. That afternoon, David called one final time. Rachel, please. I'm begging you. I'll sign away all parental rights. I'll pay child support. I'll move across the country. Just please, help me understand how to live with what I've done. I looked at Sophia, who was reading at the kitchen table, completely absorbed in her book. David, the only way to live with what you've done is to accept that some choices can't be undone. You chose Victoria over your family. You chose theft over integrity. You chose to abandon us rather than face the consequences. I took a deep breath. Now you have to choose to live with the results. But Sophia is brilliant, strong, and capable of protecting herself from people who would hurt her. Including you. I watched my daughter turn a page in her book. She's going to be extraordinary, David. And you're going to miss all of it. After I hung up, Sophia looked up from her reading. He won't call again, she said quietly. How do you know? Because he finally understands that he lost. Completely and permanently. She closed her book. Dad's a lawyer. He recognizes when a case is unwinnable. That night, as I tucked Sophia Into bed, she asked me a question that broke my heart. Mom, do you think I'm broken? Do you think what I did to Dad changed me into someone I shouldn't be? I sat on the edge of her bed, looking at my remarkable daughter. Sweetheart, I think you became exactly who you needed to be to protect our family. I think you're stronger and smarter than I ever imagined possible. And I think your father's biggest loss isn't his career or his reputation or his relationship with Victoria. I brushed her hair back from her forehead. His biggest loss is that he'll never get to see the incredible woman you're becoming. Do you think he loves me? I think he loves the idea of you. But loving someone means protecting them, even when it costs you something. Your father loved himself more than he loved us. That's what I thought too. Sophia pulled her blanket up to her chin. Good night, Mom. Good night, sweetheart. As I turned off her light, I realized that David's betrayal had revealed something extraordinary about my daughter. She hadn't just survived his abandonment, she'd transformed it into strength, knowledge, and an unshakable understanding of justice. She was going to be formidable. And I couldn't wait to see what she would accomplish. 6 months after David's final phone call, I was reorganizing our home office when I found a letter addressed to Sophia that had been forwarded from David's old law firm. The return address showed it was from Stanford University. Sophia, I called, holding the thick envelope. You have mail from Stanford. She appeared in the doorway, took one look at the letter, and calmly set it on the desk without opening it. Aren't you curious what it says? I asked. I already know what it says. She continued organizing her college research files. I applied for their early admission program for exceptional students. This is either an acceptance or rejection letter. I stared at my daughter. You applied to Stanford? When? 3 months ago. They have a program that allows highly qualified students to begin college courses at 16. I submitted my application along with documentation of my research into digital security and family financial protection. Sophia, Stanford is where Victoria was going to law school. I know. That's partly why I applied. She finally picked up the letter. Victoria used my college fund to pay for her first year there. It seemed appropriate that I should use her spot. Her spot? Victoria's acceptance was revoked after her federal conviction. Stanford doesn't admit convicted felons to their law program. Sophia opened the letter with the same calm precision she applied to everything else. The university contacted me because my application essay discussed the case. They were interested in meeting someone who had exposed the kind of financial fraud that could have affected their institution. I watched her read the letter, her expression unchanging. Well? I asked. Full scholarship, including housing and meal plans. They want me to start in the fall semester, and they're offering me a position in their cybersecurity research lab. She handed me the letter. They're also asking me to speak at their freshman orientation about digital safety and financial protection. The letter was even more comprehensive than she'd described. Stanford wasn't just admitting Sophia, they were recruiting her as a valuable asset to their academic community. Honey, this is incredible. But you'd be starting college at 15. 16 by the time I graduate high school next year. Sophia pulled out a folder I'd never seen before. I've been taking college-level courses online and working ahead in my high school curriculum. I'll have my diploma 6 months early. She showed me transcripts, advanced placement scores, and college coursework that painted a picture of academic achievement I hadn't fully understood. While I'd been focused on our day-to-day survival, Sophia had been systematically preparing for a future that would take her far beyond our small town. When were you planning to tell me about all this? When you were ready to hear it without panicking about losing me too. Sophia's voice was gentle. Mom, I know you're afraid that everyone you trust will eventually leave. But I'm not leaving you. I'm building something that will allow me to take care of both of us. That evening, I called my sister Janet to discuss Sophia's Stanford acceptance. Rachel. That's amazing news. But are you okay with her starting college so young? I don't think I have a choice. Sophia's operating on a different level than other kids her age. I watched through the kitchen window as Sophia worked in the garden, methodically, planning our vegetable layout for maximum efficiency. Sometimes I feel like I'm holding her back just by treating her like a normal teenager. What does she want to study? Computer science with a focus on ethical hacking and digital forensics. She wants to help families protect themselves from financial fraud. I laughed, though it came out a bit shaky. She's turning what David did to us into a career path. That girl is going to change the world. I know. I just hope she doesn't lose herself in the process. The next morning, Sophia found me at the kitchen table, staring at college financial aid forms. Mom, you don't need to worry about Stanford's costs. The scholarship covers everything. I'm not worried about Stanford. I'm worried about you being 3,000 miles away from home. Sophia sat down across from me. I've been thinking about that too. Stanford has an excellent online learning component. I could take some courses remotely and spend part of each semester here with you. You'd do that? Mom, you're the only family I have left. I'm not going anywhere that would prevent me from being here when you need me. She pulled out her laptop. Besides, I've been working on something that would benefit from staying connected to our community. She showed me a website she'd been developing called Family Shield. It was a comprehensive resource for families dealing with financial fraud, identity theft, and domestic financial abuse. Sophia, this is incredible. How long have you been working on this? Since Dad left. It started as a way to process what happened to us, but it's become something bigger. She clicked through different sections of the site. I've created educational resources, step-by-step guides for reporting different types of financial crimes, and a network of verified professionals who specialize in helping fraud victims. The website was sophisticated, professionally designed, and filled with practical information that could help thousands of families. Who's helping you with this? I've been collaborating with attorneys, financial counselors, and cybersecurity experts. They contribute expertise, and I provide the technical infrastructure and victim perspective. Sophia pulled up a testimonials page. We've already helped 247 families recover over $3.2 million in stolen assets. I read through testimonial after testimonial from families who had been helped by Sophia's resources. Parents whose children had stolen their retirement savings. Spouses who had discovered hidden debt. Elderly people whose relatives had exploited their trust. How are you finding all these families? They're finding me. Word spreads in online communities when someone offers real help instead of just sympathy. Sophia showed me analytics that demonstrated the website's growing reach. I get about 50 new requests for help every week. 50? Sophia, how are you managing all this in school? I've built systems to handle most cases automatically. Education and resources solve probably 80% of problems. The remaining cases that need personal intervention, I handle those individually. She closed the laptop. Mom, what Dad did to us wasn't unique. It happens to families every day. But most people don't know how to fight back effectively. That afternoon, while Sophia was at school, I received a call from a woman named Dr. Patricia Williams. Mrs. Patterson, I'm calling about your daughter Sophia. I'm a professor at MIT, and I've been following her work with Family Shield. Following her work. Sophia's approach to combating family financial fraud has caught the attention of several academic institutions. Her combination of technical skills, legal understanding, and victim advocacy is unprecedented for someone her age. Dr. Williams paused. I'm calling to invite Sophia to present her research at our annual cybersecurity conference. She's only 15. Age is irrelevant when someone is producing work of this caliber. Sophia's methods are being studied by graduate students in forensic accounting and cybercrime prevention. Dr. Williams's enthusiasm was evident. Mrs. Patterson, your daughter is pioneering approaches that could reshape how we protect families from financial exploitation. After I hung up, I realized that Sophia had become something I couldn't have imagined, a national expert on family financial protection, respected by academics and professionals who had no idea she was still in high school. When Sophia came home, I told her about Dr. Williams's call. MIT wants me to present at their conference in October, she said matter-of-factly. Harvard asked me to speak at theirs in November. I've been getting invitations from universities across the country. Are you going to accept them? Some of them. Speaking engagements are an important way to reach families who need help. Sophia pulled out her planner, which was filled with appointments, deadlines, and travel dates. I'm trying to balance exposure with staying focused on the actual work. I flipped through her planner, amazed by the complexity of her schedule. She was managing correspondence with attorneys, developing new website features, consulting with families in crisis, and somehow maintaining perfect grades in her accelerated high school curriculum. Sophia, when do you rest? When do you do normal teenage things? This is normal for me now, Mom. Helping families protect themselves from people like Dad gives me more satisfaction than any typical teenage activity could. She took her planner back. Besides, I am doing teenager things. I just do them differently than other kids. Like what? Like dating. I nearly choked on my coffee. Dating? There's a boy in my AP computer science class. Marcus. He's 17 and planning to study cybersecurity at Carnegie Mellon. Sophia's cheeks flushed slightly. He's been helping me test security protocols for the Family Shield website. You're dating someone I've never met? You've met him. He's been here 3 times working on programming projects. Tall, dark hair, very polite, always asks permission before using our Wi-Fi. I suddenly remembered the quiet, serious boy who had been coming over to work on what I'd assumed were school projects. That's dating? That's how I date. We work on meaningful projects together, discuss complex problems, and build something useful while getting to know each other. Sophia smiled. It's more productive than going to movies. Do you like him? I like that he's intelligent enough to understand what I'm doing and principled enough to want to help. He also doesn't treat me like I'm fragile or unusual. She paused. And he makes me laugh, which is something I didn't think I'd be able to do again after Dad left. That evening, Marcus came over for what Sophia described as a working dinner. I watched them collaborate on what appeared to be a complex coding project, their conversation shifting seamlessly between technical problems and easy banter. Mrs. Patterson, Marcus said during a break, I hope you know how remarkable Sophia is. The work she's doing with Family Shield is already being referenced in university research papers. She's definitely remarkable, I agreed. Are you planning to continue working together in college? If she'll have me. Carnegie Mellon and Stanford have collaborative programs for cybersecurity research. We're hoping to continue developing tools that help families protect themselves from financial predators. After Marcus left, I found myself amazed by how normal the evening had felt. Sophia was building a relationship with someone who shared her interests and supported her goals. She was creating meaningful work that helped others. She was planning for a future that included both professional achievement and personal connections. Are you happy? I asked her as we cleaned up the kitchen. Yes, she said without hesitation. I'm happier than I've ever been. Even after everything that happened with your father? Especially after everything that happened with Dad. Sophia dried the last dish and put it away. What Dad did forced me to discover capabilities I didn't know I had. It taught me to trust my own judgment. It showed me that I could protect the people I love. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he hadn't left? I would have gone to college not knowing how to recognize financial fraud. I would have been vulnerable to the same kind of exploitation Dad used against us. I would have trusted people without verifying their trustworthiness. Sophia folded the dish towel neatly. Dad's betrayal taught me skills that will protect me for the rest of my life. Do you forgive him? Sophia considered this question carefully. I understand him. He was weak, selfish, and willing to hurt his family to avoid facing his own limitations. Understanding someone's motivations isn't the same as forgiving their actions, but it removes the emotional charge of hatred. That's very mature. It's practical. Hatred requires ongoing emotional energy that I'd rather use for constructive purposes. She checked her watch. Speaking of which, I have a video conference with a family in Oregon whose teenage son has been using their credit cards to fund online gambling. They need help setting up financial monitoring systems. I watched my daughter walk upstairs to handle yet another family crisis with the same calm competence she applied to her homework. At 15, she had become someone that desperate families turned to for help, someone that universities wanted to recruit, someone that conferences invited to share her expertise. David had tried to steal her future, but instead he had revealed her extraordinary potential. The next morning brought news that would change everything again. Sophia received a phone call from the FBI. Miss Patterson, this is Agent Sarah Chen from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to discuss a consultation opportunity with you. What kind of consultation? Sophia asked, putting the call on speaker. We're investigating a multi-state financial fraud ring that specifically targets families with college-aged children. The criminals' methods are similar to patterns you've documented in your research. We'd like your insights on their strategies and potential vulnerabilities. I felt a chill run down my spine. My 15-year-old daughter was being recruited by federal law enforcement. I'd be happy to help, Sophia said. But I should mention that I'm currently a high school student. Agent Chen paused. Miss Patterson, we're aware of your age. We're also aware that you've developed analytical frameworks that our adult investigators haven't considered. Age is less relevant than expertise. After the call ended, I sat at the kitchen table trying to process what had just happened. The FBI wants to hire you as a consultant. They want my insights on family financial fraud patterns. It's a natural extension of the work I'm already doing. Sophia poured herself a glass of juice. Mom, this is what I've been building toward. The opportunity to help protect families on a larger scale. But you're 15 years old. And I have more experience with family financial fraud than most adults in law enforcement. My age doesn't diminish the value of what I've learned. That evening, as I watched Sophia prepare for her FBI consultation, I realized that my daughter had transformed tragedy into expertise, betrayal into strength, and abandonment into purpose. David had thought he was stealing her future, but he had actually revealed it. She was going to change the world, one protected family at a time. 2 years later, I was setting up chairs in the high school auditorium when Sophia walked across the stage in her cap and gown, valedictorian at 16. The irony wasn't lost on me that she was graduating in the same building where David had once coached her debate team, where he'd proudly watched her win academic competitions, never imagining she would one day use those same analytical skills to expose his crimes. Mom, Sophia said, adjusting her graduation cap, there's something I need to tell you before the ceremony starts. My heart skipped. After everything we'd been through, unexpected announcements still made me nervous. What is it, sweetheart? David's here. I turned around, scanning the crowd of families gathering in the auditorium. Where? Back row, left side. He's alone. Sophia's voice was calm, but I could see tension in her shoulders. He tried to approach me before I came to find you. I told him he needed to speak with you first. I spotted him immediately. David sat hunched in a back corner, wearing an ill-fitting suit that suggested his financial circumstances had declined considerably. He looked older, grayer, and somehow smaller than the man who had walked out of our lives 2 years ago. What did he say to you? He wanted to congratulate me on graduating. He said he was proud of my accomplishments. Sophia adjusted her honor cords. I told him that pride from someone who tried to steal my future was inappropriate. How do you feel about him being here? Curious, mostly. I want to understand what he thinks this accomplishes. She looked toward where David sat. I'm also interested in whether he's learned anything from the consequences of his choices. Do you want me to ask him to leave? No. It's a public ceremony, and he has a legal right to attend. Besides, I want him to see what I've become despite his efforts to destroy my opportunities. The graduation ceremony proceeded without incident. Sophia delivered her valedictorian speech about resilience, transformation, and the importance of protecting vulnerable members of society. She spoke about turning adversity into opportunity and using personal trauma to fuel positive change in the world. She never mentioned David directly, but everyone who knew our story understood the subtext. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and celebrations, David approached us hesitantly. Rachel. Sophia. His voice was uncertain, like he wasn't sure he had the right to use our names. Congratulations on your graduation, Sophia. Your speech was remarkable. Thank you. Sophia's response was polite but distant. David looked between us, clearly struggling with what to say. I heard about Stanford. And the FBI consultation work. And the website helping families. He shook his head. I had no idea you were capable of all this. You would have known if you'd stayed to watch me grow up, Sophia replied matter-of-factly. I know I missed everything important. David's voice cracked slightly. I wanted to be here today because I needed to see what you've become. I needed to understand what I gave up. You didn't give us up, Dad. You sold us. There's a difference. The bluntness of her statement made David flinch, but he didn't argue. You're right. I sold my family for the illusion of a different life. He looked directly at Sophia. And what I got in return was nothing compared to what I lost. What happened to Victoria? I found myself asking. She's serving an 8-year sentence in federal prison. Her law license was permanently revoked. Her father disowned her. David's voice was hollow. The house we tried to buy in California was foreclosed on. The life we planned together never existed. And you? I work as a paralegal for a small firm in Sacramento. I live in a studio apartment and drive a 15-year-old Honda. He shrugged. I make enough to cover child support and basic living expenses. I was surprised to learn he was paying child support, since I'd never received any payments. The child support goes directly into a trust account for Sophia's future, David explained, seeing my confusion. I set it up through the court. She'll have access to it when she turns 18. Why didn't you tell me about this? I asked Sophia later. Because I wanted you to focus on our present, not on Dad's attempts to assuage his guilt. She adjusted her graduation cap, which she'd insisted on wearing throughout the reception. Besides, the money he's contributing is insignificant compared to what we've built ourselves. David lingered at the edge of our celebration, not quite joining but not leaving either. I watched him observe Sophia as she talked with her classmates, received congratulations from teachers, and posed for photos with Marcus, who had driven down from his college for her graduation. She's extraordinary, David said to me during a quiet moment. I always knew she was smart, but this. He gestured toward Sophia, who was explaining her Stanford research plans to a group of impressed parents. This is genius-level capability, combined with moral conviction I never possessed. She had to become extraordinary to survive what you did to us. I know. And I know that makes me responsible for both her trauma and her strength. David watched Sophia laugh at something Marcus had said. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Rachel. I'm not asking to be part of your lives again. I just wanted to acknowledge what I destroyed and what you both built from the ruins. Why now? Why today? Because today marks the end of her childhood. Tomorrow she starts her adult life at Stanford, and I wanted to witness the transition from the little girl I abandoned to the woman she's become without me. David's voice was quiet. I wanted to see her triumph, even though I don't deserve to share in it. That evening, after the graduation party ended and the last guests had gone home, Sophia and I sat in our kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd first told me she was handling David's betrayal. How do you feel about seeing your father today? I asked. Satisfied, I think. He got to see what he gave up. He got to witness the success he tried to prevent. Sophia removed her graduation cap and set it carefully on the table. But mostly, I felt sorry for him. Sorry for him? He spent 2 years living with the consequences of his choices, and he still doesn't understand the most important lesson. She pulled her honor cords through her fingers. He thinks his mistake was choosing Victoria over us. But his real mistake was believing that happiness comes from taking shortcuts instead of building something meaningful. What do you mean? Dad wanted instant gratification, a younger woman, a fresh start, escape from responsibility. But everything worthwhile requires investment, patience, and commitment. Sophia gestured around our small kitchen, which now served as both family space and headquarters for her growing consulting work. We rebuilt our lives by making different choices. We invested in each other, we were patient with the process, and we committed to creating something better than what we lost. Do you think he understands that now? I think he understands that he made terrible choices. But understanding consequences isn't the same as understanding principles. Sophia stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the garden shed. Designed for maximum efficiency and beauty. Dad's paying child support and living modestly because he has to, not because he's learned the value of sacrifice for others' benefit. The next morning brought a letter addressed to both Sophia and me. The return address showed it was from David's apartment in Sacramento. Should we read it together? I asked. Sophia nodded, and I opened the envelope to find a handwritten letter, the first personal communication David had sent since his desperate phone calls 2 years earlier. Dear Rachel and Sophia, Yesterday I watched my daughter graduate as valedictorian, announce her acceptance to Stanford with a full scholarship, and discuss her work consulting with the FBI on financial crimes. I listened to her give a speech about resilience and protecting vulnerable people. I saw her surrounded by friends, teachers, and family who love and respect her. I realized that every extraordinary thing about Sophia's life happened not because of my influence, but in spite of my betrayal. She became remarkable by rejecting everything I represented and choosing to become everything I wasn't. Rachel, you raised an extraordinary human being while I was busy destroying everything we'd built together. Sophia, you've turned the worst thing I ever did into the foundation for work that helps thousands of families. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness or to request a place in your lives. I'm writing to acknowledge that you both became better people by having to survive me. Sophia, your mother was right when she told me I would miss seeing the incredible woman you were becoming. I missed everything important, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. I hope Stanford recognizes what a privilege it is to work with you. I hope your future is everything you're capable of achieving. And I hope that someday, when you think about your father, you remember that even though I failed you completely, you succeeded completely. You don't owe me anything, but I owe you both an apology that can never be adequate and gratitude for becoming people who make the world better instead of worse. David. After we finished reading, Sophia folded the letter carefully and set it aside. Well? I asked. It's a good letter. Honest about his failures, acknowledging of our success, and appropriately humble about his role in our lives now. She paused. But it's also irrelevant to our future. Irrelevant? Mom, Dad's letter is about his need to express remorse and acknowledge our achievements. It's still fundamentally about him and his feelings. Sophia picked up her Stanford acceptance letter, which had been sitting on the counter. Our lives aren't about reacting to Dad anymore. They're about building something meaningful regardless of what he does or doesn't do. That afternoon, while packing for Stanford, Sophia received a phone call that would reshape her understanding of her own impact. Miss Patterson, this is Dr. Jennifer Walsh from the National Center for Financial Crime Prevention. I'm calling to inform you that you've been selected as this year's recipient of the Outstanding Young Advocate Award. I'm honored, but I'm not familiar with that award. It's presented annually to individuals under 18 who have made significant contributions to protecting families from financial exploitation. This year's selection committee was unanimous in choosing you based on your research, your advocacy work, and the documented impact of your Family Shield program. What does the award involve? A $50,000 grant to continue your work, speaking opportunities at national conferences, and collaboration with federal agencies on policy development. Dr. Walsh paused. Miss Patterson, your work has influenced legislation in 12 states. You've helped families recover over $8 million in stolen assets. You've trained law enforcement officers in recognition of family financial fraud patterns. After the call ended, Sophia sat quietly processing what she'd heard. You've influenced legislation? I asked. Apparently. I knew attorneys were using my research in court cases, but I didn't know it was affecting policy development. She pulled up her laptop and showed me a map indicating states where Family Shield resources had been cited in legal proceedings. Mom, I think we've built something bigger than I realized. The map showed activity across all 50 states, with concentrations of cases in areas with large retirement populations and military families, demographics particularly vulnerable to financial exploitation. Sophia, you've created a national resource. We've created a national resource. None of this would have been possible without your support, your willingness to let me take risks, and your faith in my judgment even when what I was doing seemed impossible. That evening, Marcus came over for what had become a tradition, our last dinner together before Sophia left for each new phase of her education. Are you nervous about Stanford? He asked as we ate. Excited, not nervous. Stanford means access to resources, research opportunities, and collaboration with people who understand the scope of what I'm trying to accomplish. Sophia turned to me. Mom, I've been thinking about something. Would you consider moving to California? The question caught me off guard. Move to California? Not permanently. But maybe spending part of each year there. Stanford has excellent continuing education programs for adults. You could take classes, explore new interests, maybe even develop your own expertise in family advocacy. I don't know anything about family advocacy. You know everything about surviving it. You know what it feels like to have your trust betrayed, your security destroyed, and your future stolen. You know the process of rebuilding from nothing. Sophia reached across the table and took my hand. Mom, you've lived through the experience that thousands of families are struggling with right now. Your perspective could help them in ways that my technical knowledge can't. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. Mrs. Patterson, Sophia's right. Family Shield gets constant requests for support from parents who feel overwhelmed by their children's betrayal or spouses who don't know how to rebuild after financial abuse. Your voice could provide hope that technical solutions alone can't offer. That night, as I helped Sophia finish packing for Stanford, I found myself imagining a future I'd never considered. Working alongside my daughter to help families navigate the same kind of crisis we'd survived. Using our experience to provide both practical assistance and emotional support to people facing betrayal. Do you really think I could contribute something meaningful to your work? I asked. Mom, you've been contributing to my work since the day Dad left. You trusted me when what I was doing seemed impossible. You supported my decisions even when they seemed dangerous. You held our family together while I learned how to protect it. Sophia closed her suitcase and looked at me seriously. Everything I've accomplished has been possible because you gave me the foundation of unconditional love and support. But I felt so helpless during most of it. You felt helpless, but you weren't helpless. You made the decision to trust my judgment instead of trying to control my response to Dad's betrayal. That took incredible courage and wisdom. As I watched my daughter prepare to leave for Stanford, to study at the university that had once represented Victoria's stolen opportunity but now represented Sophia's earned achievement, I realized that David's attempt to destroy our family had instead revealed its unbreakable strength. He had tried to steal our future, but we had built a better one from the pieces he left behind. Tomorrow, Sophia would begin her next chapter at Stanford. And maybe, if I was brave enough, I would begin mine too, working alongside the extraordinary young woman my daughter had become, helping families discover the same resilience that had carried us through our darkest time. The girl who had once calmly told me she was handling her father's betrayal was now ready to help heal a broken world. One protected family at a time, and I was ready to help her do it. 5 years after Sophia's Stanford graduation, I stood in the conference room of the Patterson Family Protection Institute, watching my daughter address a room full of federal investigators, victim advocates, and policymakers. At 21, she had become the youngest person ever appointed to the National Financial Crimes Advisory Board, and today she was presenting legislation that would fundamentally change how law enforcement responded to family financial abuse. The current legal framework treats family financial exploitation as a civil matter rather than a criminal one, Sophia explained to the assembled officials. This leaves victims with limited recourse and perpetrators with minimal consequences. The Family Protection Act would classify identity theft by family members as a federal crime and establish specialized courts for financial abuse cases. I watched from the back of the room, still amazed by the confidence and authority my daughter commanded. The scared 15-year-old who had discovered her father's betrayal had evolved into a nationally recognized expert whose work was reshaping federal policy. Mrs. Patterson? A woman approached me during the break. I'm Senator Elizabeth Hayes. I wanted to thank you for your testimony during the congressional hearings last month. I was still adjusting to being recognized in my own right. After moving to California and completing my master's degree in family counseling, I had become the Institute's Director of Victim Services, specializing in helping parents whose children had exploited them financially. Senator Hayes, thank you for championing the legislation. Your daughter's research provides the framework, but your testimony about the emotional impact gives it the human element lawmakers need to understand. She glanced toward Sophia, who was surrounded by a group of congressional staffers. You've both turned personal trauma into public service in a way that's genuinely inspiring. After the presentation, Sophia and I walked to our favorite cafe near the Stanford campus, a ritual we'd maintained throughout her college years. How do you think it went? She asked, settling into our usual corner booth. I think you convinced them. The data was compelling, but more importantly, you made them understand that family financial abuse destroys more than bank accounts. It destroys trust, security, and the fundamental relationships that hold society together. The hardest part is getting people to understand that perpetrators aren't always strangers or obvious criminals. They're often the people victims love most. Sophia stirred her coffee thoughtfully. That's what made Dad's betrayal so devastating. And so educational. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the legislation had existed when Dad stole our money? He would have faced federal charges instead of just professional consequences. Victoria would have been prosecuted for conspiracy instead of just embezzlement. And most importantly, we would have had legal protections and resources specifically designed for family financial abuse victims. A young woman approached our table hesitantly. "Excuse me, are you Sophia Patterson?" "Yes. I'm Jessica Chen. I've been following your work since high school. My stepfather stole my inheritance from my grandmother, and your Family Shield website helped my mom and me get it back." The woman's voice was emotional. "I wanted to thank you and to tell you that I'm starting law school next year because of your example." After Jessica left, Sophia smiled. "That happens at least once a week now. People who used our resources to protect their families, then decided to pursue careers in victim advocacy or financial crimes prevention. You've inspired an entire generation of advocates." "We've inspired them, Mom. Everything I've accomplished has been built on the foundation you provided when Dad abandoned us." That evening, we drove to our old neighborhood to attend my high school reunion. It felt surreal returning to the place where our crisis had begun, especially since Sophia was now more famous than anyone else who had graduated from the school. "Mrs. Patterson." Sophia, our former neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, rushed over to greet us. "I've been following your work in the news. To think that all of this started right here in our little town. It started with our family being betrayed, but it grew into something meaningful because of the community support we received," I replied. "People like you who checked on us, brought casseroles, and refused to let us feel isolated during the worst time in our lives." As we mingled with old friends and neighbors, I was struck by how many people mentioned being inspired by our story to take action in their own lives. Teachers who had started incorporating financial literacy into their curricula. Parents who had implemented family financial transparency policies. Neighbors who had organized community workshops on protecting elderly relatives from exploitation. "You know what I find most remarkable," said Dr. Martinez, Sophia's former pediatrician. "Sophia took the worst thing that ever happened to her and turned it into the best thing that could happen to thousands of other families." Later that evening, Sophia and I visited David's grave. He had died 3 years earlier from a heart attack, alone in his Sacramento apartment. We hadn't attended his funeral, but we had started visiting his grave annually on the anniversary of his death. "Do you think you would be proud of what we've built?" I asked, placing flowers on the headstone. "I think he would be amazed by it. Dad always underestimated people's capacity for growth and resilience." Sophia knelt beside the grave. "But pride implies ownership of our accomplishments, and he gave up the right to that when he chose Victoria over us. Do you forgive him now?" "I understand him now. He was weak, selfish, and afraid of facing his own limitations. He chose shortcuts over integrity and instant gratification over long-term relationships." She stood up and brushed dirt from her knees. "Understanding someone's motivations doesn't require forgiving their choices, but it removes the power those choices have to define your future." "What do you mean?" "For years, I defined myself in opposition to Dad. I was strong because he was weak, I was principled because he was selfish, I was committed because he was faithless. But eventually, I realized that building an identity in reaction to someone else's failures limits your potential." Sophia took my arm as we walked back to the car. "Now I define myself by what I want to create, not by what I want to avoid." The next morning brought news that would mark the culmination of everything we had worked toward. Sophia received a call from the White House. "Miss Patterson, this is Jennifer Walsh from the Office of Domestic Policy. The President would like to invite you to a signing ceremony for the Family Protection Act next week." "The bill passed?" Sophia asked, though her calm tone didn't betray the excitement I could see in her eyes. "Unanimously in both houses. Your testimony and research were instrumental in building bipartisan support. The President specifically requested that you be present when he signs it into law." After the call ended, Sophia sat quietly for a moment. processing the magnitude of what had just happened. "We did it," she said finally. "We actually changed federal law. You did it. You took your personal experience with family financial abuse and turned it into legislation that will protect thousands of families. We did it together, Mom. Your testimony about the emotional impact was what convinced lawmakers that this wasn't just a policy issue, it was a moral imperative." The signing ceremony at the White House was attended by victim advocates, law enforcement officials, and congressional leaders who had championed the legislation. When the president called Sophia to the podium to speak about the bill's importance, I felt a pride so overwhelming it brought tears to my eyes. "The Family Protection Act represents more than legal reform," Sophia told the assembled dignitaries. "It represents a recognition that family relationships should be founded on trust, not exploitation. That parents shouldn't have to fear their children will steal their retirement savings. That children shouldn't have to worry about their college funds being used to finance their parents' affairs." She paused and looked directly at me in the audience. "This legislation exists because my mother taught me that when someone you trust betrays you, you have two choices: become bitter and defensive, or become stronger and protective. We chose to become protective, of ourselves, of each other, and eventually of every family facing similar betrayal." After the ceremony, we were approached by a documentary filmmaker who had been following our story for the past 3 years. "Mrs. Patterson, Sophia, I wanted to let you know that Family Shield, the Patterson story, has been accepted into the Sundance Film Festival. We're hoping the documentary will help raise awareness about family financial abuse and inspire other victims to seek help." "When does it premiere?" I asked. "Next month. And I have to tell you, the early screenings have been incredibly powerful. Audience members consistently say the film changed their understanding of what domestic abuse can look like." That evening, Sophia and I had dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Potomac River, celebrating not just the bill signing but the completion of a journey that had begun with David's betrayal 7 years earlier. "Do you ever imagine what our lives would have been like if Dad hadn't stolen the college fund?" I asked. "Sometimes. I probably would have gone to State University, studied something conventional, graduated with minimal debt, and gotten a normal job." Sophia smiled. "It would have been a perfectly fine life, but it wouldn't have been meaningful in the same way." "Do you think the trade-off was worth it? Losing your father but finding your purpose?" "Mom, I didn't lose my father. I lost the illusion of having a father who would protect and support me. What I found was the knowledge that I could protect and support myself, and eventually others." She raised her glass. "The trade-off wasn't losing Dad versus finding purpose. It was losing naivety versus gaining strength." "What's next for you?" "Marcus and I are getting married next spring. We want to expand the Institute's work internationally. There are families all over the world dealing with financial exploitation. And I've been asked to consider running for Congress when I turn 25. Politics. Policy making. There's still so much work to be done in protecting families from financial predators, and legislative solutions require legislators who understand the issues from personal experience." As we walked back to our hotel, I reflected on the extraordinary journey we had traveled together. A journey that began with devastating betrayal but led to meaningful purpose, national recognition, and the knowledge that we had made the world safer for vulnerable families. "Mom," Sophia said as we reached our hotel, "I want you to know something. Dad thought he was stealing my future when he took that college money. But what he actually did was give me the experiences that would define my future. Every family we've helped, every law we've changed, every person who's been inspired to pursue advocacy work, all of that exists because Dad forced me to become someone who could survive his betrayal." "And what kind of person is that?" "Someone who understands that strength comes from protecting others, not from exploiting them. Someone who knows that real security comes from building trust, not from taking shortcuts. Someone who believes that the worst things that happen to us can become the foundation for the best things we create." The next morning, I woke up to find Sophia already dressed and working on her laptop, just as she had been every morning since David's betrayal forced her to grow up too quickly. "What are you working on now?" I asked. "A new project. I've been contacted by families dealing with elder financial abuse, and I think we need specialized resources for that demographic." She showed me research indicating that financial exploitation of elderly people by family members was becoming epidemic. Same patterns as what happened to us, but targeting people who are even more vulnerable. So you're going to expand the Institute's mission again? We're going to expand it. This work requires people who understand both the technical aspects of financial crimes and the emotional impact of family betrayal. It requires people like us. As I watched my daughter begin another day of work that would protect countless families from the kind of betrayal we had survived, I realized that David's attempt to destroy our future had instead revealed our true calling. He had stolen our money, but we had built something far more valuable, a legacy of protection, advocacy, and hope for families facing their darkest moments. 7. Years after David walked out of our lives with his suitcase and his secrets, we had transformed his betrayal into our triumph. Not just by surviving his abandonment, but by ensuring that other families would be better protected, better prepared, and better supported when facing similar crises. The scared mother and devastated teenager who had stood in our kitchen that terrible morning were gone, replaced by advocates who had turned personal trauma into public service, who had changed federal law, and who woke up every day knowing their work made the world a little bit safer for vulnerable families. David had thought he was taking our future. Instead, he had given us our purpose, and that purpose would protect families for generations to come. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe,